What does pledging allegiance really mean?
I pledge allegiance.
It's more than just words. It's taking responsibility. It's getting involved in our democracy.
This is what democracy looks like.
I'm Allison Daskell-Hausman, and this is The Pledge. It's a podcast profiling people who have pledged to engage in our democracy.
These old white dudes sitting up there declaring war on women like it was back in the Victorian age. They don't have any right to be making decisions for women. They don't.
Listen to The Pledge, be inspired, and get involved.
Liberty and justice for all.
Aging is an interesting process. Not just the physical aches and pains, but the emotional journey. For me, it's both empowering and disempowering. Now that I'm in my 50s, I feel smarter, more confident, and ready to take more risks. But there are so many people younger than I am, and they're building a world that's a little foreign to me. They've got rules, language, priorities that are sometimes hard to connect with. But that's not something Mary Wilson worries about.
I'm a feisty old broad and don't mess with me.
Mary Wilson is 71. She found her voice later in life after keeping her mouth shut for a long time.
I really felt like I was going to explode sometimes.
I found out about Mary from my friend's grandfather in Montgomery. He told me she'd give me a good picture of what it's like to push back against the norm in Alabama. When I meet Mary at her home, an old collie greets me at the door.
You just can feel his big heart, you know?
Oh, I know. I've had him since he was 9 weeks old. He's 13 and a half.
Collies are a big part of Mary's life. The house has collie everything. Doormats, pictures, picture frames, statues. Mary runs a dog-sitting business, and she used to have working therapy dogs. Mary started working with dogs around the same time she started speaking her mind. She was in her 50s then. That's how long it took to break free from the conditioning of childhood.
If I sassed my mother, I would get slapped in the mouth. So you just didn't talk.
But Mary's talking now. Even her car is talking through her provocative bumper stickers.
The one that I've gotten the best response from is a woman voting Republican is like a chicken voting for Colonel Sanders.
Some of the other bumper stickers plastered on her van read, "Supreme Court, just corporate tools." "Corporations are not people." And "Dogs are family. Would you chain your grandma outside?" She says her husband worries someone's going to slash their tires, but it hasn't come to that yet.
I've tangled with some people, gotten in arguments with them, but we haven't had the van trashed. I've had people going thumbs down
When you're driving
when I'm
around.
driving.
I think I'm with Mary's husband on this one. I'd be too scared to drive around Alabama with my politics blaring from my bumper. But not Mary.
I'm angry. I'm not scared. As a matter of fact, I just dare them to slay me because then I'll get to file assault charges. And I will. Mm-hmm. I won't stop.
Mary grew up in Arkansas in the 1950s in a single-mom household, which was a bit radical back then.
My mother was divorced from my dad, who was an alcoholic, and she was my 6th grade teacher. That was an experience no one should have to have.
Mary says her mother was tough on her. But she also says she knows how hard it was for her mother to parent alone in a conservative southern town. There was a lot of turmoil at that time in Arkansas. The governor, Orville Phobus, was desperately trying to keep Central High School all white. Eventually, the National Guard was called in to escort 9 black teenagers through angry white mobs into the school. Mary's school wasn't in Little Rock, but the tension was everywhere.
I remember all the buzz around with the adults and everything, but because my mother was a single mother, she was very worried about her reputation and anything I might do to infringe on her reputation, so I learned to keep my mouth shut at a very early age. There was not much expressing opinions back then.
Mary says the piano became her refuge.
We didn't have air conditioning then, so the house was open, and one of our neighbor friends said, "Boy, you can always tell when Mary's upset. She really gives it to that piano." So that's where I took my frustrations out.
Mary was groomed as a child to hold her tongue as an adult. She and her husband John were married soon after he returned home from Vietnam. They were in their early 20s. John started working for a telecommunications company, and together they navigated his career. Mary says to ensure his success, she had to keep a low profile.
It's best for the wives to keep their mouths shut from about most things.
But after 31 years of playing that game, John was let go.
When he had his layoff, literally, I was so upset about it, I blew out my gallbladder, had gallbladder surgery.
Mary says her husband was laid off because of a corporate merger. John was in his late 50s, which is a hard time to get a new job, especially after spending his whole career at one company. And they didn't have enough money to retire. Mary was pissed, and she let John's boss and the regional manager know.
I wrote them both letters and put them in a Christmas stocking along with a lump of coal and mailed it to both of them.
And she didn't stop there. She encouraged her husband to file a claim with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And eventually, they sued for age discrimination. And they won a small settlement.
I don't feel like I won, but I feel like I kind of scored a point or two.
Mary says she and her husband suffered a lot because of the layoff. But it was also liberating.
I like myself better these days than I did back then, because it just really left me feeling like a yes woman rather than really stating an opinion.
Mary's become more politically active since then, phone banking for progressives and helping with mailing campaigns. She's hosted groups at her house and written some letters to the editor.
Gotten myself in trouble over a few of those. I'm a pretty good letter writer.
Mary also feels strongly about a woman's right to choose to have an abortion.
These old white dudes sitting up there declaring war on women like it was back in the Victorian age. They don't have any right to be making decisions for women. They don't.
Her feelings on abortion developed because her daughter Dawn has schizophrenia.
Our daughter is a prime example of why women need to have a choice. She's 47 years old. She has a mental illness. If she had become pregnant, she would have to go off all antipsychotic medication, and she would literally be locked up or tied to a bed for a pregnancy if she had to carry the child, because it would be detrimental to the child. Well, what about her?
Mary says people don't care enough about the mentally ill.
No matter where you go in this country, treatment of the mentally ill is lousy. It's rotten, it stinks.
Mary doesn't just state her opinions, she gets involved. Like many of the women we've heard from on The Pledge, Mary was spurred on by the election of Donald Trump. When that happened, Mary almost burst her gallbladder again.
I stormed out of the house and walked all around the neighborhood at the middle of the night when Trump won. I was just fuming.
To make things worse, Trump's inauguration was on Mary's 69th birthday.
I said, I cannot stand that man coming into office, and this is my birthday. John says, I'll give you the trip if you want to go. I said, I do.
The trip to Washington, D.C. to march with hundreds of thousands of women the day after Trump's inauguration. Mary is eager to share with me all of the details.
And I wore my nasty woman sweatshirt,
And of course,
a pink pussy hat.
Did you buy it or make it?
I bought it. I was kind of perturbed because I hadn't been able to find one before I left. But there was a lady on the bus who had a friend of hers who made some extras, and so she sold them to us. So that's my little pussy hat.
Mary pulls out a photo album.
I love her t-shirt. Bless your sexist, misogynistic, xenophobic, racist, bigoted heart. I was following the LGBTQ flag. That was my group, but you could see all the pussy hats and everything.
Mary says it was an awesome experience. So awesome that she decided to march the next year on the anniversary in downtown Montgomery.
I forgot how many hills Montgomery has, but had some sore calves the next day. But
She still has the poster she carried.
it says Eve was framed.
Age is no reason to stop engaging in our democracy. That's what Mary shows me. Though during the Doug Jones campaign, it was a little challenging at first for Mary to find her place because she doesn't own a smartphone.
They were doing a lot of stuff with the cell phones. We have our own basic flip phones. You can make calls, you can have voicemail. You can receive calls, that's it. Our phones are phones. So there wasn't too much that I could do there.
But at campaign headquarters, Mary spearheaded an effort to support those smartphone-toting young people working in the office.
We kept them supplied with healthy snacks, drinks, everything that they needed so they could just stay at the headquarters and work.
So being non-techie has its benefits. One of the workers, who Mary says was young enough to be her grandson, even coined a nickname for her.
You're our dorm mom. Yes, I became the dorm mom. But I enjoyed it because they're young, they're energetic, they have so much more energy than I have anymore.
Still, on election day, Mary again found a way to contribute when she noticed a reporter interviewing a Roy Moore supporter.
So I said, "Go Doug Jones," at the top of my voice. And they were finishing up the interview with him. So I said, ma'am, come on over. It was a Reuters news agency. And they interviewed me, too. So I wanted to know why I supported Doug Jones and how I felt about Roy Moore's sexual escapades, which I think is totally deplorable and something he has in common with Trump. Most immoral human beings on the face of God's green earth.
Mary keeps speaking her mind, and she does what she can. I loved hearing about Mary's determination to speak her mind. Mary shows me that age ain't nothing but a number when it comes to political activism. Thank you, Mary, for sharing your story with me. So this marks the end of season 1. Wow, that went fast. This is the end, but stay tuned. There just might be a bonus episode in the next couple months. And please be sure you've signed up for our newsletter. It's at thepledgepodcast.com. And keep helping us spread the word so we get more downloads. You've been listening to The Pledge. I hope the stories of these 6 women in Alabama have started to illustrate the power of engaging in our democracy. Our democracy's vulnerability is real. It's also very real that action together builds strength and the possibility for change and protection of these rights. Thanks to my extraordinary team, my sound designer Tina Toby Mack, Ezra Hausman for tech support, and the 6 women who got this podcast started. And thanks to you, faithful listeners. Keep a lookout for more episodes. Until then, stay strong and stick with your pledge.